You can view the video of this podcast on Jazz Cabbage's YouTube or Facebook pages.
And by the way, it is Derek Gauchi's birthday, so he's not joining us
Hi,
on
Derek.
today, but
Happy birthday, baby.
Derek.
Welcome to Jazz Cabbage Café, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For all of those folks listening in our audio world, we have Jamie Lowell, Colin McDougall, Deborah Young, and Jim Salame. I am Rick Thompson.
All right, Rick, circumvented me again on that, and that is a correct thing to do. I was going to do that, but and add that I found out the last few days there are people who just listen to the show, even though they have this beautiful video up. This,
They just listen to the show?
Video, and then don't even watch it and just listen to the show. So it's good to do that stuff.
Colin seems so offended.
Anyway.
Hundreds of downloads from our streaming services. So yes, there's lots of people that consume Jazz Cabbage Cafe without our pretty faces. What a loss for them.
Hey, so a couple things here, and there's some major politics going on that cannot be ignored that we're going to have to talk about a little bit. Apothecare representative, the general manager, Drew Hall, was going to join us today, and they can't. They're going to postpone to another show. But I hung out the other day, and they're the ones that are going in the commercial world all organic. And it is they have a great place. They've got some great product, but it's an interesting conversation because it's quite a challenge to do that. Met one of the managing partners. Those guys know what's going on, and they kind of know what they're getting into. If it's going to be done, I think they'll figure it out. We'll save that conversation for later, but I am interested in that today later on, and he's just joining us right now to hang in a little bit with the conversation. Exactly how to pronounce your last name, Patrick? I'm not sure. Frakes or Frakes? I'm sorry. When he joins us, he can let us know how to pronounce his name properly.
It's Frakes. It's Frakes.
Frakes, okay. And then we'll talk to him too about a unique approach to
There we go. Sorry about
cultivation
that.
in the commercial world. No, not a problem. Thanks for joining us early, man. We start off by just kind of talking about some stuff that's going on and our thoughts on that, and then really looking forward to getting into the conversation about the retail stores that are opening and the cultivation approach that you take to your operation. So that's going to be a good discussion. So before I just get into the obvious news of what's going on in the U.S. Senate today, there was a judge in South Dakota who rejected an amendment to legalize cannabis in the state, which was based on a people's initiative and voted on at the ballot box. And just, we'll learn more about that and see what happens when that goes to the Supreme Court there and all that kind of stuff. But just amazing that, we're still dealing with that kind of shit, but also to be expected because, as we say all the time, we've come so far, but we still got a lot of work to do to help shape the future of how things are going to move forward from this point on.
I saw it also the other day, like Idaho legislators created like an anti-marijuana bill.
It's a constitutional amendment, yes, to their constitution.
And it was
by
passed
one
by
vote.
the Senate.
By one vote.
It passed by the Senate by one vote, yeah, which is also, stupid. But I guess this is what we see as it runs its course. As these are kind of like the death throes, I think. The idea that these things can just turn stuff around or whatever, I don't think.
Well, I hope so, though. But then I also saw something that Biden might be considering Patrick Kennedy as the drug czar. What the fuck?
I saw Patrick Kennedy lobbying for the job. What I've not seen is anyone from the Biden administration actually interviewing the guy for the spot. And he would be atrocious because Kennedy is one of the founders of the Smart Approaches to Marijuana, the Project SAM that fought so hard against us here in Michigan and all across the country against cannabis law reform everywhere.
And Kevin Sabin, was the drug czar under Obama.
Right.
Which is bizarre. There. Well, it was, with the best of intentions, a lot of politics also, but the belief that there was a responsible kind of scientific view and to make sure it was tempered and that type of stuff. But, Sam does not represent much real information, much sound.
We don't need them in the
cannabis.
No, we
Patrick,
definitely
you're right.
don't need them with the president's ear.
I
No.
agree.
We have to write the Biden administration and tell them that that's not an appropriate pick.
Well, there's
Yeah,
already moves. National Normal and Drug Policy Alliance, other places have already come up with campaigns in order to let the administration know that's not good, and we should participate in those.
So we're getting some sponsors coming in here. Just starting to get some word out about that and have a lot of interest. So I'm really appreciative to a lot of the people. I know some people have been standing by and been talking to for a while. Botanical Company, where I am, Detroit Nutrient Company, Real Leaf Solutions, Redemption Canna. We've spoken with Curtis Gore a little bit.
Yeah.
Many companies. And of course,
Maybe Rair Cannabis. I don't know. There's somebody I know.
that would be cool.
Yeah.
Apothecary I hung out with the other day definitely had some interest. So we just want to offer a little bit more platform, get the more reach going, a little bit more production quality, stuff like that. And this is how we're going to do it. So just really happy that there's so much interest in the show, and we're going to put that to good use. And we're part of a family of great shows that we also like to support. I checked out the Michigan Bro Grow show a little bit last night. It was a really good show. It sounded good. The light was good. The people had good chemistry with each other. It was good content. They have a good little system down there.
Yeah.
Got to add that into the whole family of shows that have really been offering some great information to people, including the new NPO show.
Yeah, we should get those guys from the Michigan Bro Grow show on our Jazz Cabbage Cafe soon.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think as we have these conversations, such as with Patrick and with Apothecary and maybe some people from Franklin Fields, Ram, all different approaches to cultivation in the commercial world, and to kind of get those expert growers, opinion on these different approaches and see what they think the challenges are, what the advantages are.
Just to let people know too, this is our 5th season, our 6th episode, so not our first time around the block on this, and we're really good at it, actually. Jamie and I have been doing radio since, I think, 2011. I started in real radio, and we've done cannabis podcasts ever since. It's not just fun; it's kind of an adventure.
So, just to spin around, and people can, of course, put in whatever, chime in whatever you want, add to your disdain over what's going on in Idaho or South Dakota. But right now, historically, in the U.S. Senate, they're discussing whether or not to conduct a trial for an impeachment on a president who was third president in history ever to be impeached, the first to be impeached in his first term, the first to get impeached twice, also in the first term. And the second impeachment happened toward the end of the term, and the ensuing trial now takes place as he is not president, and that's never happened before. And a lot of the discussion today was about that. About if the purpose is in fact to just remove somebody, and if that is the purpose, then it's unnecessary to do this because you can't remove him because he's already gone, and that's obviously not constitutional. Those seem to be kind of, in my opinion, baseless kind of arguments to obstruct this process. There's a lot going on though, and there's a lot of discussion as to how much time and energy should go into this. And I just kind of think that whether or not enough people come together to convict in this case, that getting everything on record and getting those who might, I guess, de facto be in support of what went on, depending on perspective. I mean, if you're not going out of your way to condemn this by this process, what are you actually saying? Are you saying it's okay? I don't know. I hear what some of the reasons are, but I think no matter what the outcome, it's important to get all of this on record. And I was watching today, and it was pretty intense.
That was weird.
Yeah, I've been watching it all day too. What do you think of his attorney? I'm not impressed by his attorney at all. The arguments that he made, not at all.
Well, pseudo-intellectual gobbledygook, and I'm very biased. I did not give it really serious listen and try to reason through what he's saying and stuff like that. I admit that. So that's reactionary.
Well, one of his arguments is ridiculous. He says that because one of the purposes of this is to block Trump from running again in 2024. That's one of the purposes of this. And he argued that it's not necessary because the American people should decide who is the president in 2024. And if they pick somebody, that's their choice, which is it's a ridiculous argument.
There's a consequence laid out in law.
Yeah, there's a consequence laid out in law, and if you incite a riot against the government, an insurgence against the government, you are forbidden from heading that government again. You just can't participate anymore. You're done.
Some people are actually arguing that he didn't. So
they are arguing it. Yeah.
Rick, why don't you take over here a little bit, man? What do you think?
First of all, let me just say that for people that are not familiar, this is February 9th, 2021. And as Jamie mentioned, this is the second impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump, and it is in the United States Senate, which is now democratically controlled numerically, but not in a commanding way. So as far as this goes, when we talked about Trump's legal team, remember this is his third stringers. His first two choices of legal teams backed out, reportedly because they didn't want to try and propose to the Senate the argument that his election had been stolen from him and he actually won it, since there's really no physical evidence of that. And what we've seen is disbarment movements taken against lawyers who've advocated those points in courts of law before, including here in Michigan with our Attorney General Dana Nessel. So the stakes couldn't be greater for not just Trump, but for other people. As a Democrat, I'd like to see Trump run again in 2024, and I'll tell you why, because it just divides the Republican Party. I think anytime Donald Trump runs for election, it severs the Republicans to the point where it makes it much easier for the other guys to win, us being the other guys, the Democrats. I will say that there has to be a reckoning. If there's no reckoning, then what is the message we send to our children? What is the message we send to everyone else? When we punish African Americans in cities for minor, tiny little infractions, and we give them ridiculous sentences in jail, and we look at them, is there a crack in your windshield? Can we stop you for this? Do you have a tail light that's out? Can we pull you over for this? When that's the level of scrutiny the average citizen is going through, we can't give a passing glance at the criminality created by the President of the United States of America. It has to be a thorough investigation with lasting punishment that endures, that sends a message to future generations. This is not okay. And this is the only time our government will be able to make that statement. Now, I'll throw it to you, Deb, because you've got lots to say on the subject.
Well, I got so much to say. I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah, consequences have to be, and Trump obviously had a lot of trouble finding anybody who could legally argue this case for him. The brief is written really bizarrely. The attorney is third notch, as you said, tier C attorney. But even the attorney, because you can see this attorney, I'm not even sure what his name is. He went into great length about talking about some congresswoman who had said something and then she had to walk it back, and it's her freedom of speech. And even if he totally disagrees with what she said, he would go to court and defend her freedom of speech. So he's trying to, at the same point that he's defending Trump, he's trying to distance himself from Trump's ideas, which is totally crazy. I'm watching this thinking, this makes no sense. This dude is saying, yeah, I'm going to defend him because he has a constitutional right, but I totally disagree whatever he said or whatever happened. So that's the bizarreness of it. Yeah, the dude has to be punished. They're not going to convict him because it requires a certain amount of Republicans who have already said this morning, they're already made their mind up. Doesn't matter what anybody says. Doesn't matter that they were laying on the floor, chewing the carpet, crapping pants, when this shit was coming down, and we saw pictures of them and stuff. It's like giving birth, it's over, it's done, you've forgotten that happened, so let's move forward. And they're like, well, just forgive them and move on. This is not the kind of thing you forgive and move on. Not when people like John Sinclair go to prison for a couple of joints. Not when African Americans like Rick's drive around and get picked up or get pulled over because their license tab is flapping a little bit and end up in jail over it. This is ridiculous. This guy has to be right. At least it'll go on to history. At least it'll go down onto record. And the public will be aware of which senators supported his ass in the end, which ones still were licking his ass up to the very end. And perhaps their constituents will understand that too. If not, at least it'll be down in history. That's all, we can expect at this point.
Well, I'll say this, let's just get over it and move on is what every abusive husband says to his wife after he kicks her ass.
Right.
So
right, exactly.
That is not an excuse acceptable
and
in our society.
There's other, he could be facing criminal charges, not on this, but on other issues. And I know that there's been discussion. He's very worried about it. So the reckoning for Trump is going to come. I mean, it's going to come. He might never ever end up in jail, but he's going to spend every dime that he no longer has on defending himself. That's the money he raised. Was a fundraiser. You know, that's all. This was a big fundraiser thing for him. That's all it was, and he put it all into his pocket.
If the Trump brand name is damaged, perhaps irreconcilably. I want to go to Jim, but Jamie, you've got an add-on real quick.
Trump raised $170 million for his defense, and his last legal team proposed a $3 million cost for their defense, and they didn't end up doing it.
This was like a show to him. It was a show, and he made a little money off of it, you know.
Yep. I'll also point out how during the speech he said, "I will walk with you to the Capitol building," and instead he stayed in a heated tent, drinking hot chocolate, cheering on the people while watching it from TV. Jim Salame, so much history in cannabis world here in Michigan, and as a world traveler, you've been all around. This is third world shit, right? I mean,
it is and it isn't. It's the United States now. And I look at, both parties are so forgiving when it's someone on their side that's done something wrong. And in this case, it's the Republicans' turn to forgive and forget Donald Trump. And when I saw what was happening with Ted Cruz and the vitriol that he spewed and how he said that, we're more concerned about France and French people when it came to the Paris Accord. And people didn't really jump down him as much as they should have, except for a couple of celebrities. It's really disheartening about where this world's going. People will believe anything out there, and there's a following for misinformation. And that's the scariest part about it. My heart rate's been pretty mellow all year because I haven't thought about any of this. I haven't watched any of the courts, doing the impeachment. And now I'm reminded of what I felt the last 4 years. I don't think that he should be able to run again because of what he did in inciting a riot, in my opinion. And everyone will do anything they say to say that he didn't do that. Giuliani should be also on trial. Yes. Ted Cruz should be on trial. All these guys. What's the case? Holly or whatever his name is. The other guy from Colorado. I really
Josh Howard.
Missouri.
Is he from Missouri? Thanks. I don't really care about that guy, and I don't know, guys. I don't want this nation to be any more divided. That's the other side of it. And there's a big division in this country. Will it help if everyone just goes, okay, forgive him, let's move on? Probably not. But if we impeach him, it's not going to help either. So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with this. And for me, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen. So that's really all I got. I can't put too much.
I just hope we could write a law that would just make them go away. That would be nice.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Who is the them?
Bring my anxiety way down.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, I was going to go to Colin. We'll go to you now, sir. Patrick Frakes has joined us from Rair Cannabis. Thanks again. We'll get into a discussion about your company later on and the aeroponic system that you use to grow with. But on the subject at hand, sir, go ahead.
Well, I grew up in Washington, D.C., so I was one of those kids. When I was a teenager, I had Thomas Leahy living across the street. I had a lot of senators in my neighborhood and got to know the kids of those senators and House of Representatives. And, I was proud to be involved with politics, even as a teenager. I always loved it. I felt very impassionate about it because I grew up in DC and I love the District of Columbia as my home city. I will always think of it that way. My mother was one of the great 1970s original feminists, Gloria Steinem feminist. She raised the four of us by herself and mentored kids in the city at the same time. And seeing the political process and how it's fallen apart over the last 20 years, and I was always right about politics. And I told my wife in 2015, I said, there's no way Donald Trump could ever win the Republican nomination. And then there's no way he could ever win the White House. And I've been wrong. And I was 25 years without being wrong in politics. And it's depressing. You know, I don't want to get too political on it. I do have some family members of mine that lean a little right. But you know, I just has always felt that Donald Trump was a detriment to our society. He does not represent our interests, and the division that's been going on in this country since he showed up is terrible. And one of the things I've always loved about cannabis is how it unites people from different backgrounds. And that's what we need to be doing as a nation, is understanding people's different backgrounds and what it's like to grow up in an urban city environment under the poverty level with dark skin. What is that? That's their reality. And more white people need to understand that reality and embrace it, as opposed to wearing their blinders and just trying to act like it doesn't exist.
Yep. And of course, social movements are only relevant as long as they keep moving. Once a social movement stands still, then people forget about it or they don't embrace it any longer. So it's important for us to keep that in everyone's mind. Colin McDougall, speaking about social movements, I waited until you hit the pipe before I called on you, Helen. Ha ha. You know,
420, so
entheogenic substances, cannabis. We've been doing all kinds of things.
Rules are rules.
What is your opinion about the subject at hand, sir?
Well, first, I want to shout out Washington, D.C. too, because they passed the entheogen initiative back in November, and hopefully they'll become a state with the Biden administration and having control of the Senate and the House. And I did watch like a brief, couple minutes of the impeachment. I didn't know who was talking, or I didn't recognize the guy, but then as I was scrolling through other videos, I realized he was the Trump lawyer, and it kind of confusing me. I was like, and I like how Jamie at first described him like goobly gobbly or something like that, because he kind of, that describes him. I don't know. I think he'll get fired in the next couple days or a week or so.
Will he last that long? Maybe he'll be fired overnight.
Maybe tonight. I don't know.
Well,
You could have a lawyer of the day situation over there.
Yeah.
I guess from what Jamie mentioned earlier, by the way, we've been joined by Shelley Smith. I'll bring you on in just a second, Shelley. Thanks for joining us.
Everybody hits.
And that's right. Yes, I'm very good at that. The fact is, there are a lot of people here that are not going to vote. A lot of senators that are not going to vote to impeach or to convict, rather. Donald Trump, no matter who his legal team is, it could be the most competent people making the best arguments, and they could have the most unimpeachable legal arguments. They would still not prevail because people are just not going to allow Donald Trump to be punished for the insurrection and for his actions inciting it. Shelley, I mean, we've had quite a robust conversation here. I'm just filling time so you can continue your bong hit there. She's, by the way, for our listeners, not viewers, she's wearing a coat that looks like it was made from wild wolf fur. What did you get to? Oh, that's so
cold inside.
I haven't been home very long, so I'm still cold from being outside.
So
and I was
warm.
planning on walking while I talked, and I just realized it was I was late. I just
It's
realized
warmer inside.
Yeah, it's warm.
I was aware that it was warmer inside, Jamie.
Mike McCurdy mentioned last week on the show that you volunteered to help out with the prisoner coalition effort in the meeting. And he said, this person, Shelley Smith, that seems like it. And they said, yeah, she's normally here with us. You could have praised her.
Well, and it's very, I don't know what the topic is. What am I supposed to be commenting on right now? What you asked me about? Or is there...
The impeachment trial today. Today's the start of the impeachment trial. Second impeachment trial, sorry.
I have not been paying attention to it. So, but I can tell you that I'm already tired of hearing about it. So that 12 seconds that we were just talking about it was super annoying. If that gives you I
think it'll be over before next week.
I would like
to
ignore. I don't want to give him any more press. I don't know if the punishment of him just never being spoken of again, if that could be some sort of new alternate punishment, because I don't really want to hear about it. I'm so much calmer with just not hearing something crazy happening every single day. I just want to not hear about it very much. So if that's all.
Our blood pressure
also,
levels.
I would rather the energy of the leaders that just got elected be put towards problem solving and not focused on him. So, I mean, and I guess I just don't want him having so much more attention.
Those are all good points, Shelley. I understand.
That's all.
Progress. Let's move forward.
Yeah, let's
By
be
the same token,
proactive. Yeah.
you have to
Let's
you
take
have to
these
remember
4
that
days and kick his ass first, and then we'll move forward.
the fact is there has
Okay.
to be some kind of a historical precedent. This is a
Yes.
first ever situation, and if we don't act now decisively, then the next time it comes up, someone has the legitimate right to say, "I thought it was okay because last time it happened, you didn't do anything about it." So
Well, what if it went on the books as like, we didn't impeach him because what if of the official stance of 2021, and I'm not a lawyer and I don't really know what I'm talking about,
I'll
but
just play one on TV.
but if we you know, if the precedent that was set was like, oh, well, what happened to that guy? It's like, we don't know. We ignored him forever.
Donald Who.
You know, like, could that be what happens? Because that'd be
That would be
so
awesome. And nobody goes
comfortable.
to his clubs.
Well,
Nobody goes to his buildings. Nobody does business with him. He's like the invisible dude, you know?
Well,
Lindsey
or you
Graham's calling
became
him the most important person in the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is he's going to still be the head of their party, and that's the problem. That's the
Yeah.
big problem.
That's
but
really
you know,
why
when
we have
someone
to-
goes from being in our society, for better or worse, people can go from having power to being a joke fairly quickly because we're a cruel nation that passes judgment quickly, right? We're cruel people, and the internet justice is swift, you know, and he had so much airtime the last 5 years, just so much airtime, and I'm over it, I guess. And so for someone to have power, they have to have a lot of airtime. And I feel like that's a new kind of punishment for someone who's sort of a fame monger, you know? Like and it's not prohibiting someone from running forever, but if someone becomes an actual joke, like people remember that person more for memes or for ridiculous things they did. Like, the main thing I've heard about Donald Trump in the last week is that letter that he wrote to SAG-AFTRA. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Screen Actors Guild, it's
Yes.
a union
He was
for
like,
for
I've
motion
been in
picture actors.
movies, and so it's like, if we want to publicize something, let's just stick with things like that. We're like, this is
Yeah.
really where this guy's head at. He's like, he's walking around his house right now going like, they don't even want me, and I don't want them. I quit them first. You know, it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. Yeah,
you know what?
Exactly.
Go lay down. Go lay down, honey. Go play with the cat. You know, just take a load off. Just drift into the sunset, or you know,
God, could you
Go
whatever.
pet one of
imagine being
Melania's
his
fur
wife?
coats.
Oh
Yes,
my
right.
God, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet she's cool. I don't know how she got
I
mixed
don't
up
know
with him.
how the hell. I don't think she's cool at all. Maybe she was at one
I
time,
bet
but
she's lovely.
how
Why
you-
wouldn't she be lovely? You know, she's never done anything bad to me. I'm sure she's
okay.
fine. But
Okay.
That's a pretty bad standard to have. Well, you know,
I know.
That's setting the bar real.
ISIS never did anything to me, so I
But
guess
think
it's-
about all the people who've in one way or another done something a little bad to you. I'm not asking for somebody that she's a human being. She's a human being.
But yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
You know what? I
That
want to
will-
believe in
I
the
can agree
benevolence.
on that.
I want to believe in the benevolence of folks, and you know, giving them credit where credit's due and things like that too.
Right.
And certainly, there's a lot of shade tossed on his family members, his adult children. But Barron, the young guy takes some heat too, and he shouldn't. It's not
Yeah,
right.
he should. He should. But some of them, you know, asked for it. His daughter asked for it.
come
I mean,
on,
she's
yeah.
out in public. She's begging for the
Right.
attention.
You put yourself in
I
that
think
position.
Melania
you're in.
does too. Melania's been walking around giving all of us the middle finger since they walked into the office. She
Well,
wears coats
so
that
you know
basically
what's
say
interesting
"fuck
is
you"
like,
on the back of them.
I'll give you an example. Like my mother, I would say South Carolina is pretty Republican area. And I had this conversation earlier, not really a conversation. I asked a question, which was, one day we're going to have to I want to sit down and ask you, you know, how this man got your respect. You know, ask my mother. I'm like, I
Explain
know that
yourself.
I'm just like, I'm just out of curiosity. Like, I know backstage pageant dudes, they're usually pretty creepy. I know people who put their face on the side of planes, they're usually pretty creepy. You know, like, before he was even president, how did he end up getting your respect? Like, if he was just a dude in your town, right?
Right.
You'd be like, who is this dude with the, you
Yeah, if
know,
he was
who,
your neighbor, you'd be like,
it'd
wow,
be
this
like
creepy
weird. You
guy
mean
on
he
the
like
block.
fires
Yeah.
everybody he works with, and he like has 10 bankruptcies?
Yeah.
Like,
Why
you'd
is
be
that
like,
guy always
"Ah,
yelling? Why? Yeah.
Yeah, why
getting
is he
with that
yelling?
dude." But and it got, anyway, my point is that my mom loves Melania. She's the prettiest first lady ever. She wonders why
Well,
everybody
I
gives
hope
her
it
a
turns
hard
out
time.
that
Right? Like, she
was
just
trapped in
wants to
that
have a
horrible
pretty
situation.
first lady. That's where she's
Is your
coming
mom real
from.
conservative and stuff?
So,
Is she real
Yeah, but
conservative?
more
Well,
importantly,
how does she reconcile like the naked photos and all that stuff? How does she? Which does she say? Oh, it's art, or what does she say?
it's not a logical thing. It's a tribal
Okay.
emotional identity. And here's something that I think we have to just remind ourselves of,
it's
is that
blind loyalty.
people don't understand. There's changing your minds about something, like, oh, I used to eat that kind of peanut butter, now I eat this kind of peanut butter. Or, oh, I used to like that kind of music, and now I like this kind of music. Like, people don't get too emotionally upset about certain identifiers, right? And they forget that they can change their mind about, you know,
Right.
like, you can change your mind.
There's new facts. You can change your mind.
Surrounded, when you're surrounded, it would be really hard to change your mind if you grew up in a certain way. And
Well,
like,
this is a
I
common
get it,
issue that we've talked about a lot on the show. When people internalize
Yeah.
something, it's difficult to shake it. When we talk about
It's
the
really,
surrounding those things that help to predict effect of cannabis use, the labels of indica, sativa, THC percentage, etc.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe those things have a lot of meaning in evaluating, you know, what the predicted effect is going to be, and
Yeah.
there's not necessarily support for it. But it's very, very difficult to go down that path and have that discussion because it is so incredibly internalized. We were joined earlier, I'm not sure if he's still on, by Ryan Basor, and who mentioned a couple other things about the situation in South Dakota, how that particular judge was hailed for being such a freedom person with some responses on, well, his responses are on there. So whether or not he's still,
you're talking about in the chat.
yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
Like, well, I didn't see him come in.
well, now I solved the problem.
Maybe he was behind Shelly doing the bunny
Anyway,
or something.
she was talking about like not locking people
That's what
down or
Shelley's
whatever,
talking
you know,
about, that coat.
and getting hailed for like you know, being this freedom, you know, person or whatever. And now she's like trying to block the will of the people and offer more freedoms. And he pointed out that contradiction.
Yep. Well, I tell you what, Jamie. Before we go, I'm sorry. You want to finish?
Well, I was going to say, I was going to start, unless you have something more to say, I was going to start talking to Patrick about Rair.
I do have something more to say. At this point, I think it's important for us to meet the newest member of the Cabbage Café family. And I know it might be a surprise to some of you, but meet Varnell, my new office chair. Yes. Easy boy. Varnell. Ooh, it is the primo office chair. Nobody's got one like this. It's extra wide in the body, extra tall in the back. Not like Patrick, who's appropriately proportioned, but you know, this particular chair.
Built-in. Never mind.
Very important.
Are we all introducing an inanimate object, or just Rick?
No.
Like, do I get
looking
to
around? What do I got?
Thankfully, just Rick.
Okay.
Is that like a variation on like a premium vinyl or something?
It actually is a
Corinthian leather.
A leatherette, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Because I wanted to resist burns, right? Because I don't want to scorch it. But it's a big man's chair. It's extra wide, even though I don't need the width. It's a tall man's chair, so it goes extra tall, even though I don't need it. Shelly has a favorite green marker she's showing us. You have weird pets. That's all I can say. All right. Yeah.
I know what I'm going to show.
And Colin
this is my signature nail color.
Very nice.
And Patrick is
This is
vaping
my
with
jar
his
of
own
mystery
branded vape.
So this is a
I got
live
my
resin
tumbler.
vape cart too, by the
I
way.
don't have anything cool by me at all.
Yes,
Oh,
you
yeah,
do.
you do.
have
You got
Rick
you have our
and Jamie.
respective packages right over your
Just go like this, and you're
Oh, well, what
introducing.
else would I need?
That's,
That's right.
by the way, Patrick,
Got
those cartoon
everything.
characters are myself and Rick.
The R and the J are very demonstrative. So yes, but
No,
let's.
Well,
I
can
love
I,
the
well, the
imagery from
thing, can
Saturday
I
Night
just
Live.
say one more thing about not paying attention to, I'm ready for a good news stream. I'm just ready. I'm ready
Right.
I'm ready to start spending more of my brain hours thinking about people getting out of prison and sunrise and plants and I want less bad news, I want less of talk about battles, because like then I feel like I'm always living in a battle, and I just don't want to set up my day and my brain that way. So right now the impeachment thing is a battle, and when I turn on the news I hear about the battle and I hear everybody's sides, and I think I've got battle fatigue, I'm ready just to, I want to filter it through a little bit more. And
Have a little political PTSD.
I just want to focus on good news. And it's really, a lot of times it's easier than it has been this past year, because you can go out and mingle and find the crew that doesn't really want to share bad news all the time. But right now it has been much harder to filter it down to, what do I really want to focus on? Because it's everywhere. It's insidious.
I was saying the same thing, Shelley. I just didn't get as much sympathy as you.
Oh,
we have to get
I'm
more.
sorry.
We have to get
I
more.
was like,
2 minutes.
Well, I'll
You
tell you
got
what,
2
no matter
minutes.
how much we want to avoid the reality of what's happening around us and the consequences and impact it could have on our lives, those things do exist. I understand wanting to engage them and be stressed by them.
Look, I can solve Shelly's problem. I was saving this till the end of the show, but since she's brought it up right now, I've got one thing that's going to elevate all of our moods. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Today is National Pizza Day.
Oh, fuck yeah.
We're having
Smiles on everybody.
Pizza.
Smiles on everybody.
I
All
eat
right.
pizza that and just,
That's
I'm just to tell you about, I've been cooking my ass off these last few weeks, and I've been dating this guy who works at a mushroom farm. And I made this mushroom, like big fat oyster mushroom, fresh mozzarella, garlic, homemade pizza. And so with the next time we get together, I'm going to cook the fuck out of a bunch of mushrooms, feed you guys.
That sounds awesome.
That day will come, but we also need to finally to have some discussions with Patrick here. About
yes, I'm sorry. Hi, Patrick.
We're having
and not too long from now, we're going to have a representative from Mac Labs on to talk about some of the changes in testing procedures and stuff like that. I'm anxious to know at some point how the approach to cultivation plays into testing and some of the strict standards and stuff like that we have. But Rick, take it away.
Well, I'd like to introduce Patrick to our gathered audience here for Just Cabbage Cafe. Excuse me. Patrick is one of the principals at Rair Cannabis Company, RAIR, which has a retail location in Bay City and is opening a new one in Muskegon in 2 days. And they have several other openings planned this year. But it's important to note, Patrick is a caregiver, that one of those people that actually was able to leap from caregiving into the retail cannabis world and do it successfully. He's a guy who suffered some consequences from the legal system in his youth for cannabis, and he knows exactly where we're coming from. And not only does he know all that, and he has a successful business, he's growing cannabis in a pretty damn cool way. So I'd like to introduce Patrick Frakes from Rair Cannabis to our audience at Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Welcome.
Thank you guys so much, everybody. Really appreciate all of you guys. And before I say anything about me or Rair, I just want to say nothing is more important than the work that you guys have all done for the legalization efforts, for the Last Prisoner Project, Michael Thompson's case. Those kind of things are what really matters. And certainly major kudos to all of you guys. I've been huge fans and really proud of the efforts that you guys have all put forward. And it's the most important part of this industry. So thank you very much for your cause and your efforts. But yeah, so I was the little brother of Danny Frakes and had my first bong hit at 13 years old. You know, my father and brother were both pretty legendary drinkers as well. And so, you know, my teenage years were spent experimenting with drugs, going to a lot of live music, and really being very fortunate. You know, I found my happy family with my friends, and a lot of it involved going around to Grateful Dead shows. You know, I did 15 Dead shows from 82 to 85. And then in Richmond, Virginia on November 1st, 1985, I was sitting tailgating with a group of about 10 friends. I was 18 years old in 2 months, and an undercover cop came up and had a script that he had read from. He had a Steal Your Face t-shirt on, and he had talked about the shows he had seen going through the South, and really roped me in. Very naive kid, and it was asking, he said, I'm sober, I don't have any drugs, I don't have anything, anybody got anything they can help me out with? And before I even got the 20 bucks in my hand, I had handcuffs on me, and found out I was one of 225 kids arrested over 2 days. For the Richmond Police Department, you know, felt their war on drugs would go to round up as many kids as they can at a concert, you know, and really entrapped me. And, you know, I didn't realize at that point that it was entrapment, because I was just intending to go to a show, not intending to sell drugs. I actually never was an active drug dealer. I was the kind of guy who would get a quarter pound, sell 3 ounces and keep one for myself, you know, and be able to save a little money, but never really did any active drug dealing until a cop made me a drug dealer at a Grateful Dead show. And then, as I was telling Rick, the bigger crime that was committed against me, scam, was the prosecuting attorney sitting there and treating me like a privileged white kid and saying, hey, don't throw your life away. We'll give you a 1-year probation if you plead guilty to a felony. And my dad was adamant, saying, you're going to plead guilty to that felony. We're not going to court and risking you going to jail over this. And, you know, as I look back on it, you know, the felony conviction has been a huge hindrance in my life. You know, and I've been very lucky, you know, to have successful business ventures. And, you know, one of my most frustrating stories was I've always done a lot of coaching with youth sports and high school sports. And while I was a volunteer coach at the high school, I was also a youth coach for rec sports. And I think it was, you know, about 2007, maybe, that the rec league started doing background checks on the volunteer coaches. And they found my felony conviction, and they told me I couldn't coach youth sports anymore. So I'd been like a very successful youth coach, all the parents, all the kids really fond of me. And I was like, you guys understand I'm coaching at the high school as well. And they're like, yeah, I know, this is stupid rules we got, but there's nothing we can do. So, you know, that stupid thing stuck with me my whole life. And, you know, when cannabis legalization started happening out in Colorado and California, I mean, I was so envious, you know, and because I had done some good entrepreneurial things, I knew that I could make this work. And I was waiting for it to really see about it turning the corner and making sure that federally it was going to be, you know, the cat's out of the bag, the train is.
Patrick, I don't think we can hear your audio.
You went on mute.
I did?
No, you're fine now.
Okay, sorry about that. It's probably the Wi-Fi. But
Go
anyway.
back to the part where Jamie and I are heroes and start from there.
No, but you know, when I found out Michigan was doing this, you know, it was something that became very important to me, and I came to Michigan to be a part of the industry. You know, and I'm very thankful that I was able to go through the commercial process and get licensing in place. But as I was telling Rick, you know, we're not funded by any, you know, venture capital group. We're not funded. We're not tied to a real estate investment trust. We're homegrown cannabis commercial operators, you know, and before the MRA changed the laws, it was my intention to be a vertical, but with also having caregiver spotlight in every store. So every community we'd have a store, we would have a caregiver wall and basically promoting the caregiver brands in those communities, which is the only thing we should be doing. You know, and if I ever had any say in the regulatory model, I would immediately let caregivers back into the commercial system. I don't know why a hairdresser can work out of her house, and you can have a giant hair salon. Nobody cares about those businesses, but in cannabis, too many lobbyists, too many lawyers, too many money grabbers that want to try and limit exposure to this industry, which is a mistake. And I fully support the social equity aspect, you know, the gender equity aspect. I'm very proud. We have 3 women running all of our divisions. Our director of cultivation, Ashley Hubbard, has her master's in plant population genetics. And all 3 of the women, when we got them to sign their contracts, we gave them ownership in the company. So we're trying to do it the right way. You know, when we were exploring the best way to do commercial growing, one of my buddies was growing aeroponically out in Washington State. And I didn't even really understand what aeroponics was. I knew about hydroponics and deep water culture, you know, and I was really into that. But, you know, the next level of aeroponics, and truly what we're doing is we are keeping the plants suspended in a collar on a table that has a tub underneath, where we have 271 misters that are misting the nutrients and water onto the plant, onto the roots. Every 15 seconds, it's on for 15 seconds on, 45 seconds off. So constantly spraying the root system there. And, you know, when I first learned about it, I was fascinated by this, how much it speeds up the growth process, how that can be beneficial, obviously production wise. But then what was really cool was growers really were geeking out on it, you know, and the growers, because you take away the dirt management aspect of growing, you allow growers to focus on the TLC of the plant. And so they're really, the interaction between the growers and the plant is what I've probably gotten the most, you know, pleasure out of, and really seeing the way that they can work on terpene profiles. They can work on, you know, individual nutrient programs for each individual strain. Because we're automated and we have these, it's called a matriarch, a mother table, where we put the nutrient mix together. We can change, you know, fully automated rooms, individually controlled rooms. So one room can be a sativa room, temperature's higher, you know, the plants, you know, are going to be growing at a different structure than what we've got with some of those indica strains. So it's been really fascinating to be a part of. Aeroponics is much more a benefit for the user than it is for the grower or for the company, because one of the best things about the plant and the product is flushing. You know, when you can flush at the end of your flowering cycle without having soil in those pots, it really allows an unbelievably pure flush of that plant, and you're getting all those nutrients completely draining out of that plant. No heavy metals issues, because again, we have no soil. And then, you know, when you don't have soil, you also reduce a lot of your potential contaminants. So we're a pesticide-free grow. And so, you know, what we get our COAs back, it's nice to see heavy metals, ND, pesticides, ND every single time. And really that has been the best part about it for us. We always wanted to have, you know, quote unquote, the best weed in Michigan, which everybody says. And I would never claim that, but what I will claim is that we have quality product. And, you know, as a lifelong smoker, I hate a harsh hit. And, you know, when you feel that harshness on the intake, and you know that cough is coming because that weed was not dried and cured properly, and it might have had too many things left over in it, you know, that is something that you really feel as a consumer or a patient. And so that's the best part about it.
Let me come in a little bit right now, because we have Bob Miller with us from ACT Labs, the testing laboratory out of Lansing and in several states. And he's got kind of some limited time, but I wanted to get a little bit of information into the testing changes that are taking place. And I'm wondering, as a segue into this, and of course we want to resume this conversation, is there any issue with aeroponics as far as testing goes? Is anything that's happening now or has happened prevented an issue for you for the kind of restrictive, you know, high standard testing that is required?
No, actually, from our standpoint, we think aeroponics actually makes the testing process easier. You know, there's nothing on a consumer basis or anything that's doing with the growth cycle of aeroponics that is somehow taboo or outside of the norm. It's more of just sort of simplifying the process of growing. But the reason why more people don't do aeroponics is it costs a lot more money up front. And with private funding of all these cannabis projects, because there's no lending, a lot of people aren't willing to make that commitment that's necessary. But I would think the testing labs, the ones we've worked with, have been very receptive and really actually impressed with our COAs and how consistent they are. So every time you go through a harvest of the same strain, it's going to have really similar results every time because of our automation.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, man. And again, we're going to resume this conversation here in a minute. But Bob Miller has joined us from ACT Labs, and Jeff Nemeth, who started this with some other people in Michigan, moved out to several states, getting back into the Michigan scene in full force, along with these new changes and everything going on. And just to kind of explain what that is, what was happening before, the testing wasn't being done correctly maybe, or there were things being disregarded, but it's believed to have let some microbial stuff pass that it shouldn't have. And so now there's going to be added stuff. So if you could explain that for us, Bob, I really appreciate it. And then if you could include at some point whether or not this is going to take more time and cost more for people. Hey, welcome to the show too, Bob Miller from ACT Labs.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, so first, yes, thank you. So yeah, I want to share with you sort of the most recent changes that are happening in the state related to microbial testing. And when you look at microbial testing, there's really two distinct parts of it. There's ones that are very specific to specific microbes, and those are specifically three: Aspergillus, E. coli, and Salmonella. And then there's also something called total yeast and mold. So the changes that are occurring right now are really in the space of total yeast and mold. And what happened historically is there was really two different types of testing being done. The traditional plating methodology, and the traditional plating methodology is one by, you essentially take the product, the flour product in particular, you essentially extract the flour and then plate it to see if you have microbial growth. And you're looking at the total amount of yeast and mold in the product. And what had happened over time is there was really two different methodologies that were being proposed, and actually in one particular case, actually certain laboratories in the state were actually approved to do what's called QPCR. So QPCR is very similar to the testing that's done with coronavirus, whereby you're actually determining a DNA sequence and showing that that DNA sequence is the same as the microbial attribute you're testing for. So it's a very, very accurate test when used in a very appropriate way. What had occurred in the state, there were a number of laboratories who said they could do qPCR instead of the traditional plating methodology. And the difference really is cycle time and cost. So the cycle time for qPCR is about a day, and for the traditional plating method, it typically takes 3 days. So that was the major difference. As time evolved, there were a number of people doubting the accuracy of qPCR for total yeast and mold. And what the state decided to do at the urging of a number of laboratories was to bring in an outside expert to evaluate the various types of testing that could be allowed and to be used. And they used a group called AOAC. AOAC, think of it as an independent consortium of government laboratories, but really chemists by trade, but really, the AOAC really stands for the Association of Official Agricultural Chemists. So it was an impartial team that was asked to look at the specific various types to do total yeast and mold and to make a determination about their validity. What they concluded at the end of January is the qPCR method was invalid. And probably the most concerning component of it was that the belief it was underestimating the yeast and mold in the product. So what the state has done, which occurred at the end of January, is they essentially said that as of that date of January 22nd, anyone using qPCR had to cease its operation and use. And then the state has required, until such time that that method would meet the muster of AOAC, which has very strict validation guidelines, you could no longer use that test as the sole test to do total yeast testing. And in the interim, what has to be done is if you decide to use QPCR, you have to then partner it with one of the other two approved types of methodologies. In the recent change in the state, and the impact is obviously cycle time, and I would argue more than likely cost, because the cost of consumable materials to do the traditional plating method are more expensive than that for QPCR, but at the same time will be yielding reliable or more reliable results.
Bob, what is the difference in cost between those two tests? They're both existent in Michigan, so we should know the finite cost for those already.
Yeah, I can't speak to what the QPCR test costs because we weren't using the QPCR tests. The traditional plating tests are less than $100 for the test. So I really don't know what the QPCR because we weren't using it.
And that's typically performed on one batch, which is what, 10 pounds of cannabis? Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Is it likely or possible that the other method will meet standards soon enough? Is it close, or is it just a failed system at this point?
Hard to tell. The information that we've gotten and the information I have is the underestimation of the yeast and mold is due to the inability to fully extract the microbes from the plant if they were present. So what the state has said, the AOAC has a rather extensive way on how to validate a method. And what the state has indicated is that if you want to continue, if you want to use that method as a standalone method, you would have to meet that set of criteria. But based on what the AOAC has already determined, that would be difficult to achieve without a methodology change. So I think the chances of using it as is pretty low.
A technological logjam at this particular point, then, correct?
Yes. Yes, I think at this point in time, what is really happening is those specific laboratories have to move their operation to either use qPCR if they so desire, as well as the more traditional methodology. So it's really a movement away from those specific types of criteria.
Fascinating. And this is something that has been brewing for a while. Do we know how long AOAC performed their evaluation of the market to determine that the methodology was invalid?
They had spent, what happened at the state level, they'd gotten some anecdotal information over the last few months that there was this report that there was this underestimation of total yeast and mold. So the AOAC about 3 months ago asked each of the laboratories that were performing the various types of tests to provide them data. And I believe they also did some testing themselves, all done in an independent nature. And then they just recently came back with their conclusions, indicating that the qPCR method is an invalid test.
So we're not going to see, or likely not to see, a big price increase, but there will be a time increase now, for sure, just by a matter of necessity of how the testing works.
Yeah, yes, I think that's the case. I think the other thing that is definitely happening in the marketplace is I've been talking about total yeast and mold. As I was mentioning before, there is another test which looks at individual microbes. And in that particular case, there is a single approved methodology today to do those microbes, but you have to marry it up with 2 different tests to do that. And the good news on that one is one company is very, very close to being able to do a PCR-like approach to be able to do that. So the good news on the individual microbes levels, I think we're probably a few weeks away, maybe months away, to being able to do a single test there, but not in total yeast and mold.
And the value of being able to do the single microbe tests, clearly Michigan has a pretty high testing standard already. Would there be additional legislation required to monitor specific microbes or make it mandatory to do so?
No, the state of the regulations today, I do not anticipate will change. It's really what specific methodologies you can do to perform those specific tests. And that's what's really changing, all for the better, to create more accurate, reliable data.
So Bob, I know that, you kind of like gave us a few minutes here and really appreciate it. Is there anything else of interest or of importance that you'd like to let everybody know before we move on?
I think at the end of the day, our job, as I look as being the CEO of ACT Labs, is really to generate accurate and reliable data. That's what our job is, and our job will always be that. And really, if there aren't any individual questions about it, we want to make sure that our patients get safe and reliable medicine. So that's very much what we do. This change in the total yeast and mold did not impact us because we were doing it with the plating method. So, if there are any specific questions, I could talk about this, you might imagine, for hours about it. It's a very intriguing topic. But if anybody has any further questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'd be more than happy to take through where I think it's going. But the technology is moving all to the better. In the future, I think we will have a very reliable test in months and years to come for total yeast and molds. It just was too premature, and therefore really potentially had situations whereby we were using that specific technique, that is, we're underestimating the potential levels of microbes seen in a product.
Bob, just to clarify before we let you go, the plating method you said is approximately $100 per batch, and the QPCR method was less expensive because it was less materials intensive and less time intensive. So someone with the QPCR was paying less than 100 and it's going to just go up to $100. This is not a huge increase in price for a 10-pound batch. I don't think it's legitimate for any retailer or wholesaler to raise pricing because of this. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think that my understanding was more the cycle time component than anything else was the impact, right? So you're moving away from a less than a 1-day test to now a 3-day test. That's really the major change.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, Bob, and thanks a lot, ACT Labs. Been a favorite of mine for many years, and we appreciate Jeff and everybody there and the philosophy that you guys bring to the industry. And we'll check in again, hopefully, on some more other issues and get your.
Sure, anytime.
Great information.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay.
That was
Bye-bye.
a great summation of the situation, too.
Yep,
That was
I agree.
So Patrick, let's return back to I'm going to set the stage for our listeners again. So we have these plants suspended in midair over this gigantic tub of bubbling liquid spraying up on them in a torturous manner. And the plants are just loving that shit, right? That's aeroponics, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what's really cool. We've had our building operational for about 16 months now. And every time I go in there, everything's green. That's what's great about it. I don't ever see yellow leaves. I don't see curled up leaves. I don't see, the plants looking willowing like they're droopy. It's fascinating.
It sounds like this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it sounds like the same concept of the big cloner I use. And I have left plants in there after I've transplanted, and they've gotten huge in that cloner. And you pull them out, and there's like this huge. Yeah. So is that similar?
Held in that little foam hockey puck, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. It's just basically
I've got a big
process.
Yeah.
So when you lift up the tabletop, it's like a spider web under there.
Right.
The one of the most important things is we have to put a screen over the drain, or else the roots would just fill up the drain and clog up right away.
Right.
Because they grow so dramatically fast. And that's biggest problem we've had, or not problem, but just dialing it in, is with our Fluence LED lights. We've had to scale down that intensity because these plants will grow way too fast. And you don't want them getting up above the canopy before you're getting into the flowering cycle. You want to create, those flowering points to increase and slow down the process a little bit. But the veg time, from the time we take it out of the cloner until the time we turn off the lights for the 12-12 cycle, is only about 11 days. So it's incredible.
That's a fast turnaround for the industry, yes.
Right, and that's what, obviously there's financial benefits and you're getting more harvests, and, if you can flip the room, you can try and get 6 a year. We're never going to get to 6 harvests a year per room, but we're well over 5, which is really incredible in itself. And again, what's been so much fun as a stoner is that, I'm really getting into, the commercial scale of growing and watching it with 1,500 plants in a room, and seeing that consistency on each row with the canopy It's been a lot of fun, and it's fascinating, and it's really great for the industry. You know, all these things we're talking about with the yeast and mold and the aspergillus and things like that. I mean, there was a ton of great product in the caregiver system in Michigan over the last 10 years. Unbelievable quality growers in this state. But it doesn't change the fact that there were some guys out there that were flipping a bag of you know, harvest 4 or 5 days after they pulled it, and they were trying to get it into store because they needed money. And, you know, the moisture content was through the roof, and you've got powdery mildew issues. And, you know, so those things, we do want to know about it. Obviously it's good to know about it, and it's really important, you know. And again, for those caregivers that were doing it right and becoming those incredible quality growers, they were getting, you know, they didn't want to be compared to the guys that were doing that kind of stuff and had the trash bag full of weed that had mold all over it. They were trying to slide through the system. So it is important that we all know that we've got quality product for sure. And it's great to know that aeroponics really helps us as a grower, and helps us as a consumer to have confidence in it.
It's an interesting growing cycle. I remember when hydroponics was first introduced in Michigan, it started to become popular right along the 2008 when the medical law was approved and people were given the opportunity to grow in their own home legally. And that was revolutionary at that time because you're growing in tiny little clay pellets, brand name Hydroton at that time.
Right.
And that was revolutionary. Now growing with no soil whatsoever. This has intriguing issues here. You say that each one of the plants is suspended in a yoke or in a little disc.
Yeah.
Is that expandable as the stalk grows? Because clearly you get a lot of explosive growth out of the plants.
Yeah, it does. So it's like it has the ability to it expands up. The plastic will expand up as the stalk grows. But yeah, the stalk
It stretches, right?
Yeah,
It stretches like a cervix, Rick. You know.
exactly.
Oh.
So yeah, that is
Yeah,
necessary.
'cause that
also.
happens
Sphincter.
On
He
my
relates to the
cloner, too,
sphincter
with
more than that.
Yeah, but with the collars on the cloner, if the stalk gets big, it'll leave it stretches, you know.
Yeah. Well, that spongy material, sure, but I'm thinking about the entire weight of an entire plant. I know how heavy those things can be, you know, at maturity.
Well, I think it's what the structure is that's it's supporting it.
Well, and aeroponics, you know, really comes from actually NASA and, you know, SpaceX now with
cool.
trying to grow vegetables in a limited resource environment. And, you know, if there's ever one reason why you guys should support my company, you know, one of our long-term ventures, and this is something that I've been geeking out about.
Weed in space?
No, it's actually, it's actually providing
Space weed.
containers for third world countries and climates that can't grow vegetables. Because this thing, you can have a water reclamation system where you're not even using more than 50 to 100 gallons a day, and you can grow all kinds of lettuce and tomatoes and great fresh vegetables in a really limited environment. And, you know, because the aeroponics expedites the growth process, you also can turn more, you know, harvest with vegetables as well. And that is something that's a long-term goal of mine. It's something I've always seen as a big win for our company, is to be able to give back. And, you know, any type of desert climate, you can use solar power with water reclamation and an automated system inside to control the environment, and you could grow all the vegetables you need.
Well, we've been talking about space here a little bit because it is applicable to that venue. You know, Elon Musk has talked about creating grow chambers, dropping them on the surface of Mars, and then activating them remotely so that by the time humans arrive, there's a crop already in existence. When they walk right in and they have food ready for them. That's possible with an aeroponic system. Water's heavy, but if you're only carrying, you know, 100 gallons of water, that's
Right.
not so bad.
And that's the thing, you know, we go through about 20,000 gallons a day in our facility, but we have a $320,000 water reclamation system. So we're only off-putting about 150 gallons of water a day.
Oh, no way. For a 1,500 plant grow?
No. Well, that's one room. We have about 10,000 plants.
Okay.
So no, this is an amazing, we're reclaiming 95% of our water usage. We have 3 RO units. We have a arc skid filter. You know, we worked with a company called Urban Grow and Cerna out of Colorado to design the system for us. Hydrologic actually is the vendor that did some of these units, but it's really badass. And it's again, you know, what we're trying to do, LED and the water reclamation system, the aeroponics. We don't have to do all of this dirt management. We're just trying to reduce our footprint while creating a really great product.
What a great thing to say. We're trying to reduce our footprint while creating a really great product. And the concept of having one of these self-contained units in an arid location, Namibia, the Sahara, Asia, you know, a lot of even places, mountainous places where it's difficult because there's no soil. You could actually utilize that.
California
Amazing.
with its water shortages.
Right. And it really should be happening more now. You know, that's why we need more advocates and people that have got this figured out to be committed to making it happen, because we should stop waiting.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. What a world-changing potential that you have there. And again, so many good things emerge from the cannabis industry. Clearly, aeroponics is something that has been useful in other places, but there's no growth industry like the cannabis industry. And if this is something that takes off and becomes the national standard for how people cultivate on a larger scale, that really will make a difference internationally.
Is there a book or a video or something, Patrick, that is a really good resource if you've never really heard of aeroponics that you would recommend?
Well, that's a great question. I have just done a lot of Google research, but I don't know of one particular book that has been, you know, I knew 2 aeroponic growers was how I first got started in this. One of my buddies was working in an aeroponic grow in Washington State. But I can certainly, we do have information on our website at rairco.com, RAIRCO.
Okay.
We talk about the aeroponic process, and we want to educate everybody about it so they don't think it's something, again, you know, weird or somehow, you know, not safe, because it's actually the most safe way to grow because it's reducing, you know, a lot of potential problems. So
Anybody else in Michigan doing this, Patrick, or is Rare the only one that we know of?
we're the only one.
That's
And
fantastic.
again, you know, it's not really, everybody would love to do it, but it is a significant, we spent, you know, about $12 million on the facility for 20,000 square feet of canopy. So, but we have a processing lab in there as well. So it's not just all for the aeroponics, but, you know, it is very much, you get your ROI if you're willing to put that capital expense in there. But, you know, if you do a hybrid greenhouse or something like that, you're probably under or right around $100 a square foot, where we're about $250. So it's a gigantic expense. But, you know, we have grown. Right now we're harvesting about 700 to 800 pounds a month, and we don't have 30 employees in the building. We're at 29 growers. So
Wow.
You know, the labor rate is greatly reduced because you're not moving dirt. So your harvest, your destem, all these processes are more efficient, quicker to get through. The cleaning of the room and scrubbing the room and getting it ready for the next plants to come in is a lot simpler as well. So again, we love that we allow our growers to be growers and not to be doing a bunch of crap work that they don't want to do anyway.
Well, let's talk about Muskegon. That's opening on Thursday. This is just one of several openings that you have planned for 2021, but it's an exciting second retail location for you.
Well, we really, you know, one of the areas that it feels good is to give back, you know, in Muskegon, especially where the green zone is in Muskegon, is a lot of dilapidated buildings. And our building was really run down itself, you know, and it was not falling apart, but it was about ready to start falling apart. And we had to put a new roof on, new HVAC system, and put a lot of money into rehabbing that facility, and, you know, hired 12 great people from Muskegon, a few that are social equity, you know, applicants. You know, obviously not as owners, but as employees, they were arrested. They did have drug charges against them. One of them is an active participant in the Minorities for Medical Marijuana. She's an amazing young woman that's a part of our team. And, you know, just feels good to be involved in a community like that and knowing that there's a lifeblood being brought back into that community. Obviously, there's a lot of smokers there, which is obviously good for our business. And we want to be part of that rebirth. You know, that's what makes you feel great about your business as well. And if we're growing a great product, doing the right thing by the community, giving back to the community, which we're committed to, we know that they'll be there to support us. And I love the west side of the state. I'm a big fan of Western Michigan. And so Kalamazoo, Lowell, and Big Rapids and Reed City are all coming up this year on the west side. So we do want to be a well-known brand on the west side, but not just so much about the aeroponics. While that is in our name, it's a big part of who we are and what we do, but it's more about the community knowing that we're part of this industry, that we're users, that we've been there through the illegal times. And unfortunately, I was victimized by the old war on drugs, and Ashley, our director of cultivation, she's born and bred in Colorado, and now she's become a Michigander, and she found her boyfriend and has fallen in love out here and fell in love with the state of Michigan. So it's nice to see all these positive things happening from an idea that popped in my head about trying to make this real. And I'm very proud of that.
Early on, you'd attended some of the Michigan Cannabis Business Development Group conferences that I've hosted. Of course, I had to suspend all that because of the COVID-19 situation. But networking and seeking information like that, how important was that to you in business development?
It was everything. It was literally everything. I was smart enough, I didn't want to outsource, to a consulting firm, and pay Canna Advisors or Medicine Man Technologies. I didn't want to do that. So what I did was I just put out my credit card and I just started going to events. I went out to Seattle, went to Colorado. I did the national events, the NCIA in Vegas. But then I was always attending the Michigan events, every single Michigan event I could, whether it was a CannaCon or a Benzinga or your events. I always felt more at home with the Michiganders, and quickly, I met Craig Aronoff and he became our lawyer, and I met Jamie Cooper, and I met Ryan Basor about 2 years ago at this point. He was at our site in our construction trailer before our building was even up, and so being part of that part of the community was always vital to me. And, again, not trying to speak bad about other vertical operators out there, but we didn't want to be thought of as a corporate fat cat. We're not in this to sell our company in a couple of years and make a quick money grab. For us, this is about helping patients, helping veterans, and more importantly, helping people who don't use cannabis realize that you should put cannabis in your life. It's going to make you a more well-balanced and happier person. And to Shelley's point, we need less battles and we need more everybody uniting and getting along. Nothing can do that better than cannabis.
I agree. Well, we look at polling on a national basis. 68% of Americans believe cannabis legalization is the right thing. Medical cannabis use, over 90%. Clearly, Idaho not supporting those type of things. But the fact is, we've got so much support on both sides of the aisle that as a partisan healer of wounds, or I suppose a healer of partisan wounds is a better way to say it, cannabis can certainly be that balm, can be that salve.
Well, and that's the thing, we want to make sure that the patients and caregivers and real lifelong consumers understand that we're here for them, but we're also here for the soccer moms and the people that are over 60 that are sick and tired of taking Advil. Those are the people we need to communicate to understand, it can get rid of, all kinds of inflammation issues, hypertension issues, fibromyalgia, all of these things. There's so many things. And, even with Alzheimer's, I've been personally connected to someone in the Florida medical program. Dr. Michelle Weiner, I don't know if anybody knows her, but she's actually really, really a huge advocate in the medical community for cannabis. And she has worked with Alzheimer's patients, and really that amyloid plaque buildup issue is something that I think is still being, the stigma of cannabis is prohibiting the medical community from realizing this could be the game changer for Alzheimer's, and people that have a genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's. If they're taking CBD and maybe just a baby amount of THC and keeping those receptors active in their brain, it's going to prevent that amyloid plaque buildup, and that should be broadcast everywhere.
We've been saying for years and years and years that people should pay more attention to cannabis and the healing powers it has, and that, I think we can all agree, has been on the rise. It's been on the increase. We see the number of states that are adopting legalization programs because they know the lies of the drug war were just that. And medical programs, even where legalization exists, are still surviving, even though they may not be thriving. In Michigan's system, you have to be 21 years of age in order to use cannabis on a recreational basis. So if you need it for any purpose, medicinal, you have to have a cannabis card until you are 21 years of age. And that's going to be super important for people. That whole system can never go away. Unlike my body, which seems to be fading as the light comes in. I'm a disembodied head. I'm the former head of Rick Thompson.
Honestly, earlier it kind of looked like you were on the beach. Like sometimes like there's like a bunch of like yellow and it kind of looks like sand.
Like
And
in
it's
Bear
like,
Down Munchausen when
Yeah.
Robin Williams' head gets separated from the body.
That is an old school reference. That's a great. But
Too soon, Jamie.
I'm in a studio here where I have 4 skylights and I'm surrounded by glass all around me, so I get a lot of the evening sun during the Jazz Cabbage Cafe. It's kind of fun.
Nice.
Nice. No, Patrick, it's excellent to listen to you. Jamie, go ahead.
Yeah. So, what other lines of product do you have in your store that is featured?
So we do have a processing lab as well, but we are, this is one of the unique things. We will evolve, I think, to have relationships with other growers and processors. But right now we're only carrying our own products. And that was really kind of a goal. One of the things we were developing this business plan for was to apply for a medical license in Florida. The medical program, as it expanded in Florida right about the same time that Michigan's did. I think in 2016, late Amendment 2 passed in Florida. There was a licensing application that was out there and we were gung-ho, which requires a vertical model. And at the same time with my partner, Kevin McFadden, the real estate developer, we wanted to attack Michigan as a vertical as well, not because we wanted to, obviously the profit margin is real and you get to control that price point. You're not subjected to the wholesale fluctuations, but for us, again, it goes back to quality. We make our carts out of cryogenic ethanol because it bypasses winterization and makes a smoother vape cart. Pretty simple stuff. We chose aeroponics because it helps us have a cleaner quality flower and with less chances of problems. So everything we've done is to try to make sure, hey, there's something that is in our store that people can count on. And so that's why we have started with our own product lines. We hired a chemical engineer that had been working in the nano-emulsion space and had been groomed by Pfizer to go into the pharmaceutical industry, and we stole her. I'm very proud of that. And she wanted to get out of it because she felt she was impassionate about being involved in cannabis as opposed to the pharmaceutical side. So those kind of things, we're trying to, again, embrace where cannabis came from, but also take it to where it needs to go and be a beacon for that.
Yeah. Excellent message. So when
That
we
was
talk
Dr. Michelle, you said?
Dr. Michelle Weiner.
Yeah.
Dr. Michelle Weiner. Okay, because somebody in the comments, Sophia was saying that she wants to let people know about her to make sure she's got it correctly. It's Dr. Michelle Weiner. Okay.
Yeah, she's down in Florida, but she's a huge advocate. She speaks at a lot of events. Well, again, before they got canceled due to COVID.
I find her online, maybe on one of these type of platforms, I'm sure.
Yes, and she's legit for sure. She's the truth.
So let me just throw in a pitch there for Redemption Cannabis. And Redemption and Rair seem like a great combination because you both have a similar message.
Well, I've always thought about that too. And again, I think of Ryan as a friend, and we're just getting really going and who Rair is. So I'm excited about the evolution and supporting brands that are doing the right thing as we continue to evolve for sure.
Fantastic.
I'm looking forward to seeing the new store this week.
Me too. Really excited to get you guys out there.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it's in Muskegon, Michigan. You have an address on that for our Muskegon area viewers?
It's 1871 Peck Street, 1871 Peck Street, just down from Bella Soul and around the corner from Park Place and Redbuds. We're in that district, which is the way we like it. We want to be where everybody else is.
He got that from memory. Didn't have to look it up. That's a professional right there, boy. Nice.
I've written it down a lot of times, as you can imagine.
Yeah, well, anytime you have a retail opening, especially with the build out as extensive as you described, I'm sure you spent a lot of time at planning and agonizing over it. So that address must have floated in your nightmares at times.
Well, and the coolest thing about my project, just to give props, is has nothing to do with me. It's all about my team. You know, the three women that are running our divisions are a lot younger than me, a lot smarter than me, a lot cooler than me, and they're fascinating, and I couldn't be more proud of them. And you know, we're up to about 60 people now between our retail spaces, our processing, and our grow. And you know, it's fascinating. Again, this was an idea in my head at one point. I didn't know if I was going to ever get anybody to fund the project, you know, and believe in this. So it feels really good to be here and be hanging out with you guys.
Well, the fact is, in Michigan, it's dynamic. We have a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of companies that are emerging. It's difficult to know who to get behind, and until you actually get the story about how things developed and who the actual players are, it's just one brand name after another. And I certainly appreciate you sharing the story of Rair Cannabis with us today.
And I think it helps to confirm what we've said quite a bit on the show is that aside from the business acumen and having resources and all those other very necessary elements for participation, to understand the history, the culture, the nature of the plant, to have some experience with it or have people around who have, is a important part of the formula in this new world.
Well, if you guys don't mind me just saying one more thing, I think you'll find it valuable. You know, I think I told the story to Rick. You know, as a kid who grew up in the suburbs of DC, you know, and even though I was arrested at that Dead show, you know, I definitely benefited from the white privilege and being allowed to be a stoner without cops driving around my neighborhood all the time. And when coaching high school football and basketball, 99% of my kids were Black. And I watched over 12 years so many stories of these kids doing nothing wrong, but somehow ending up under arrest. The taillight stories, the kid sitting on his front porch, hanging out with his friends and getting arrested for underage drinking, you know, and when 4 of the 5 were overage drinking, I mean, of legal drinking age, you know, and I've had kids lose scholarships to college because of a possession charge. You know, and this is just, it's insane to think about how easy it was to ruin a kid's life because he was Black and he had a joint in his hand. And that kind of thing just had such a huge impact on me, watching it from a firsthand experience. All those kids were like my children, and it was painful to experience, and it really it opened my eyes very clearly.
Are you already a part of like Last Prisoner Project or something like that?
No, but I 100% am going to be. You know, really, the last year has been so much about getting this thing up and running. Now
There's
we're
a couple of
there, and I need to be a part of it. I've told Rick I'm committed to being a part
nice.
of it.
Good. And I'm sure because of that, right?
Yeah.
And there's like some coalitions that have been formed, and the support is welcome. And some good work has already started, and you know, hopefully just the beginning.
Right, just the beginning. So much more work to be done, and it needs to be done faster.
Right on.
That's true. Well, thanks again for joining us, Patrick.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your show, and I'm going to hang out and keep listening.
Oh, cool. That's quite good. Man, was it Thursday in Muskegon?
Yeah, Thursday.
And everything.
About
Thursday
3 o'clock.
3
o'clock, you said?
3 o'clock for you guys. Yep.
All right, Jamie, you hear that?
Yeah.
Jim, Colin?
Are y'all going to the opening?
Yes, I am going to the opening. I believe Jamie is going to the opening. He might actually have a small dog with him. You never know when Jamie shows up. Occasionally.
What?
Rub the fur on the product.
Say
Well,
that again,
I'll
but
be
slower.
in touch because I'm curious. Are you guys going to ride out there and ride back on Thursday?
I'm sure I'll be taking a different route because I'm coming from Flint, but Jamie's coming from the D.
I am continuing on to Kalkaska from there.
I think we might have to spend the night there.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
Muskegon's got some nice places.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Okay.
Driving from there to Kalkaska.
He was laughing at that.
well, the thermometer says, lows and the minuses. So it is a little more cautious of a travel. You want to get done before it gets dark if you can, just to be sure. There's a High Times Cannabis Cup that's just been announced. It's kind of a hybrid cannabis cup. It's not a traditional gathering like we normally have. This is an online entity only, where people, dispensaries specifically, would submit a half a pound of cannabis. It would be divided up, and people would then buy judges' kits for the various categories, submit their voting online, and then High Times would award awards on an online ceremony based on those votes. It's very interesting. It's very hybrid. Jamie is shaking his head vigorously.
I think Adam Brooke did an excellent job kind of not being too harsh on High Times and offering the kind of a balanced perspective on how it got so far in the story. And he mentioned that those who are familiar with the heyday of High Times and these events and how it worked out with judges and all that kind of stuff don't recognize this kind of a scenario. And I can definitely relate to that. He did point out a lot of people will probably want to participate in it. And so that's probably true too, but this is just weird, from my perspective.
The name High Times brings a lot of cachet. And if you have a High Times award, Jamie has one. He was given a Trailblazer award, and I talk about it every time I get a chance to because it's a really big deal. You can absolutely imagine why people would want to pursue this. It is different, though, in that the judging is being done by people who just paid for a kit, as opposed to being a curated set of individuals crafted by the High Times staff itself.
But don't these contests or these events, whatever, they require a buy-in from the participants, from the growers? It's a buy-in.
A pound, a bunch of money,
into it.
And then they sell it. Yeah.
You have to buy into it, and then they basically sell it. So that you're just kind of bummed because now you got to pay for the judges.
All right. So look at that versus the fact.
Had to pay.
Look at that versus the fact that Rick and I have been selected to be judges for several years in a row for several of those contexts.
Right, without paying.
We prefer to go back to that way.
Yeah, where they gave us a lot of fees.
But I'm just saying, this is why I don't bother to participate, because I don't have to. I would say, why should I pay somebody to tell me that this is good weed? That's just ridiculous. And High Times wants a huge amount of weed and a big entry fee.
There was a time, and I think they're probably trying to recapture this in part, when it was legitimate, I guess, marketing to say this is a 3-time cup winner or whatever.
Right. Well, no, it's an honor. It's great.
Well,
anything from High Times is like, hey, it's High Times. But I'm just saying, let's be real about these events. That's what they were. They're a big buy-in from the growers. So if you had a lot of money, and most people would say, most caregivers or people I know, small-time growers, would say, yeah, I'm not giving them no damn pound and giving them, or $1,500 or something like that. That's not happening.
Yeah, but it's literally
a lot of good medicine does not make it in because half a pound plus a bunch of money versus
it's ridiculous.
That to somebody who might appreciate it.
You're really keeping your participant level on an exclusive basis now, and of course, High Times has a cannabis brand in Michigan. They have 3 different strains of flower: black, red, and white, whatever it is, different labeling. So one would imagine that the places that sell High Times cannabis will be the drop-off locations for those entrants, for those half-pound bundles that you're being delivered, and that they would have to come by secure transporter, because one single individual, unless they were a secure transporter, is not allowed to carry 8 ounces at one time legally. So you can understand why the system is set up in a way where caregivers are not allowed to participate just because of MRA rules and compliance. But even if caregivers were, who's gonna? What caregiver would do?
I'm not here. Let me give. Here's a half a pound and blah blah. I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's an intriguing new idea. You can't fault the company for trying to be creative in a time when the traditional business model is taken away from them. They're trying to pivot. They're trying to find a way to make themselves work.
Yeah.
Adam brought those things up last night.
And the early cannabis cups and events were awesome. We all love the hell out of those. Are you kidding me? Those were great events. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Patrick,
so give them props, and the name carries a lot of weight. I'm just saying, for myself personally, no, I'm not giving you a huge amount of weed so you can tell me that the weed is good. I mean, come on.
Patrick was ready to enter every one of the categories till we started to talk him out of it. I'm sorry, Patrick.
No. I was really looking for the old style cannabis cups that existed, not this online, grab bags for people to buy in stores. I'm concerned about the judging process.
Yeah.
You think?
The thing is that
Without
oftentimes,
Jamie, it's definitely not legit. No
Exactly.
way.
there was already High Times had, let's just call it, a questionable reputation when it came to integrity regarding the results of their contests in the past. And the people that already know that because they've been around for a long time, this might give them additional pause when it comes to those awards. But here's the thing: the majority of the cannabis buying community does not know the stories we know. They do not know the background we know. So a High Times Cup from 2021 to them is equivalent to a High Times Cup from 2018, and that was a banging judges kit, let me tell you. So I know when they used to give you an eighth to a quarter ounce, and we had 50 entries. So.
Saw how
A whole stack
the
of edibles.
categories
Like, how are you
grew over
going to eat all of
time.
those?
As more products became kind of specialty products, and they had their own categories. Used to keep like a bunch of different kinds of concentrates at first, and then each kind of concentrate, including solventless and all that kind of stuff, became separate. All the CBD products became separate.
Yeah. In reality, this is a High Times is part of our culture. The magazine itself goes back decades, and High Times is one of those things you would hide under your mattress from your parents, right? So you'd have a Playboy, you'd have a Hustler, and then you'd have a High Times, and those were the things that you'd find in an outhouse near the deer blind, all the way in the woods.
And the ones in the High Times with Rick's name in it are particularly more stimulating. When you're
there are a bunch of them with my name in it because I used to write for the magazine. But the other thing is, as a cultural monarch, as a cultural historian, High Times can't be beat. They kept up to date on the different stories, continuous publication for all that time.
During some very conservative times, they were still a voice. They were unabashedly taking on the challenges.
They were the golden ring. Yeah.
They've been around forever.
Very important, yeah. It's what it's turned into over the years. It's getting a lot of criticism.
It's the name, I know.
A lot of the big time people who we've become associated with over the years.
And especially like the last High Times when it was in the final one up in near Flint. Everybody was angry about that one. I remember.
There were very, very long lines. It was very, very hot. They did not make allowance for medical patients. It was the first rec one. It was the first one after rec. That was a 2019. And for those people, it was quite disastrous. I will tell you that those people that waited 4 hours to get in line to get in there, they were all happy as hell once they got in. The 4 hours were forgotten, and they just enjoyed the wonderfulness that was spread before them. But it definitely exposed some weakness in their game plan.
Yeah, I've got going back to the old days, the Wild Wild West ones, 2016 and shit. It was just crazy.
How about 2012 or 2013 when they were in Detroit at Burt's Warehouse and the cops came in, cops walked through and made them take away all the cannabis and all of the pipes and almost arrested the guys from M3 Marijuana Mix, which is just a soil company, because he wanted to see the guy's ID, his medical ID, because he was selling soil.
Whoa. The big criticisms was not hiring off-duty Detroit police officers to run security. That was one of the invitations to the raid.
Well, you have to play the game.
How about road trips?
And remember, there was
out of state ones.
There was an event in 2009 in August off of Michigan Ave at a warehouse in Detroit. And one of the first ones, Hillary Delaney helped put it on. It was kind of controversial in some ways on post, but they did do that. They did hire off-duty police officers. And in fact, at that event, this is really early on, people were going to see the doctor, getting the recommendation letter, going right over to the medicating tent, getting cannabis.
Dave and I were there.
This is how you do it.
I have
that one went off without a hitch.
We went there to find out how do we get into this? How do we figure out how to get into this?
I have a great photo of that from the venue itself. There's a giant billboard right on I-94, which it was right along Michigan Avenue in the I-94 corridor, advertising that cannabis event in 2009.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, so
great.
So myself and Rick and Charmy
It
Goals.
was all muddy and shit. Remember? It had poured
Dayton,
rain,
yeah,
it was all
that was
muddy.
rock, it was so
A lot
wet.
of people had to put a lot of hay down and stuff like that to keep it going.
That still didn't
But
help.
in that Burt Warehouse one, because they did that one, that was a few years later before it came back and used
Yeah, that was crazy too.
the Clio Township racetrack.
That was the one you got on the bus. That's the one that Bert, you got on the bus
Yeah.
and went for a little
Magic vapor
ride.
ball.
Myself, Rick, Charmy Golson, and Matt Abel were the discussion panel that time, and that was pretty cool. That was the beginning of the Michigan High Time stuff, and then we went on to like be a part of those for the first few years.
Yeah.
Well,
2016, we did all the panels in 2016. There was one of us was on at least every panel that was on there.
I don't say 5
Well, that's why.
in a row or something like that.
even the veterans panel. So, Jim, you were trying to get in?
Well, it's just like back in the day when people were just dabbing and smoking in their
Yeah.
dispensaries. Like House of Dabs, I think isn't that what the name of it was in Detroit?
Yep.
And
Yep.
they
The
had,
Dab House? The Dab House.
Ohm's Dab House.
MS Dab House, yeah.
The Dab House.
that was great.
Yeah.
The old
Big
days.
J.
The old days.
How about the Dab Wars too? The Dab.
Look at
Wars.
Oh,
think
that's
back
a
on
voice
some
of
of that
experience from
Dab
Patrick
Wars,
Frakes.
yeah.
You know about Dab Wars?
I only attended
Dab
as a
Wars.
consumer and consuming, not as a.
I agree. Those were fun times, man. Just
The first time I
showing
saw
up there.
It was an amazing experience for me.
Yeah.
Well, when you see that kind of interest in the industry, and you know that kind of love for the plant and for what it does to you, when you know that that's out there, it makes the decision to get into it on a business level a lot easier. You know people believe in it. And these are people that spend a significant amount of their time with cannabis, using cannabis, purchasing cannabis. So it's a culture. It's not just a hobby. It's not just a substance. Alcohol is not a culture. Cannabis is a culture.
Definitely. I'm still a flower guy though. As much as I love to dab, I can't do it.
Do you like the old school hash, Patrick? Like bubble hash or something like that?
Yeah, we do. We're doing a hash live rosin too, but again, for me, I'm gonna hit it every once in a while, but on the regular, it's just flower for me. Or the live resin vape carts has been a new revelation too. I like it a lot better than just regular vape.
There's a real shortage of hash in the industry.
It's making
I'm part of a
I
group called
agree.
Hash Lovers of America, and that's what we're gunning for, is to get more hash and get the discussion more about hash. And I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 dispensaries in this area of Washtenaw County that even sell hash.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get. It's just not retail.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. I usually know where it is, but not retail. I don't really engage with retail very much. So
Right.
Let's talk offline.
Black market, it's still pretty pricey. You're not getting a lot of breaks even there, but it's commercially, people have a problem with it because the yields are so low. But and it's more time consuming, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it.
Right. Patrick, what's the obviously flower has dominated the market for a long time. I saw recently a report that said that medibles were just a very small fraction of what retail stores actually do, and vape carts were on the decline as well. Would you say that's approximately what you've experienced?
Yes, and I think part of it is to do, again, we're getting into more specialty items, which is good for the industry. Specifically live resin vape carts. Live resin carts, I think, will take over, and will, really regular distillate vape carts probably will go away in the future. The more you can get any type of vapable closer to the entourage effect, that obviously is what the consumer is going to look for. Now you see some of these THC Delta 8 CBD combo carts, that are producing more of an even body high. Just getting a wide range there. But certainly on the edible side, we're seeing a massive increase in edible sales. I think edibles probably due to COVID, and people just looking for more things to do while they're at the house and can't do anything else. But edibles are not going away for sure, and nano gummies, nano edibles will become more prevalent, faster onset. And provide more options for that as well. So I think that will become, the more you have an edible that somebody can start feeling in 15 to 20, 25 minutes, it's going to generate a new audience as well, kind of like me. You know, because I've always wanted the instant high, and edibles has never been a huge thing for me, other than sleeping.
Well, the part of the issue with edibles oftentimes is that people take it, and because their system doesn't register the effect for an hour or so afterwards, or perhaps even longer, sometimes they take a second dose, and then when the effect comes, it's stronger than anticipated. So having a faster onset would probably alleviate a lot of those concerns about utilizing medibles.
Right, and that's one of the wild things. You know, it's an evolutionary process, but you know, for some people that are using edibles to get through the night, the faster onset will actually be a deterrent for them. You know, because they want it to last longer. So it's unique, and I think it will be a matter of time before we actually start creating a combination edible that has some nano particles in it and has larger particles, so you're absorbing a more percentage through your digestive tract, you know, and not getting into your bloodstream so fast. So, but it's a, you know, that's all dialing it in. We're in the infancy. This is like the bag phone stage when it comes to cell phones, when we're talking about the processing and extraction side of cannabis. We're going to be so light years ahead of this 10 years from now.
Nice, nice. Well, again, being an innovator of technology always has an advantage in the marketplace. But some of the things you're talking about advance the knowledge level of all mankind, right? We're talking about some revolutionary stuff here.
Yeah. No, and I think, you know, that's where, you know, we're going to see at some point with federal legalization, we're going to see things in our grocery stores, you know, in the near the beer section, like infused beverages or nano drops, you know, nano THC drops that you can put in any beverage you want. I think that's going to be a very useful item. And again, going back to that onset time, if you've got that nano particle sized oil in a drop that you can put in any beverage, sometimes if you're doing it really small particle size, I guess they below 20 nanometers, you know, and then it gets into your saliva and you're feeling it almost like you're smoking it. 8 to 12 minutes, you're getting a head high from drinking something that feels just like an entourage effect cannabis high. So that's intriguing stuff, but it's again, we're just getting started.
Similar to the method with sublingual tablets, where you just put it under your tongue and it's absorbed through the tissues of the mouth into the saliva.
Right. You get that euphoric hit, but you're not then committed for a while.
Which I gotta say, it sounds like your operation, it just puts so much pride into your grow and everything, and then you take your concentrate that you process, and then you make an edible out of that. One thing that I'd love to see as we grow in this industry is more healthy options for people. Things that don't include so much sugar, and because gummies, people get hooked on those, and brownies, and you have to eat a brownie every night to go to bed. Right. I remember we had a guy that came in and bought like 5 brownies, and he every day, and he would eat these brownies throughout the day, and it was, I mean, he gained weight, and it wasn't very healthy for him. So.
No, and that's so true. You know, vegan options and sugar-free options have to continue to grow. We certainly want to be a part of that too, but again, it's taking one piece at a time and making sure we go through the R&D and get a product line that works. Flavoring is such a huge issue. The stabilizer package with nanotechnology is a really big issue. Anytime you make nanoparticles, that actually gets more bitter. So you have to do a lot more with the flavoring to mask that. So there's challenges all over it, but it's so important. You know, unfortunately, I fight the battle of the bulge, and COVID has not been good to me. But you know, it's the same thing. If I get a little bit of sugar in my system, it's like heroin. I feel it, especially as I get older. You know, and then you know your body is like run down, but you want it again, and so you really have to force yourself. Don't even have that one cookie, that one little bit of sugar, because it really, your body just kicks in and wants it more.
It does.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shelley?
Dessert after a pizza.
Oh no, I was just thinking, no. I've been just cooking a lot lately. And lately it's been like, what kind of ice cream can I create? What kind of pie can I create? And luckily I have people I can give those things to, give it away, because it's become a little bit, it's good we don't live in the same town, Patrick, because I'd be showing up with like infused muffins and infused ice cream and infused, but might be interesting if you're looking for someone to work with on development. I don't know if Chef Gigi has ever been on this show. We've done Arids and Weeds together, and she is really wonderful at, like, when she came on my show, our meal was like this power berry vegan salad and potato bread with rosemary. It was amazing, and there was no sugar at all. And that's what she does. Like, that's what she's doing. That's what she does. And I would love with someone to partner with. I feel like we're going to have to do a lot of educating more than we realize over the next 5 years. Like, in 5 years, there's places that have never really known anything about cannabis, and we're going to have to teach those very, very basic things about dosing and expectations and how different bodies react to different things and medibles. We're going to have to stay so basic for a while, but I also hope somebody is partnering with somebody like Gigi to create like the salad dressing. And
I believe Antoinette Sarfo has a project with.
Yeah, they work together too, I think. And it's so she's a chef. She would be a great one to get to know if you haven't met her and gotten to know her yet. Yeah.
Learn more because
she's awesome.
Again, it's kind of ridiculous, and we're talking about edibles and medibles. It's medicating, but it's gummies and chocolate. These are the things we're talking about. Sugar, milk chocolate, not exactly what we're supposed to be promoting as medication, but that's why we have a lot to go through and get better at.
But as a retailer, you have to respond to market interest. And if that's the product that your customer base is demanding, then, I mean, we can help them, steer them to better choices, but ultimately it would be better if Rair Cannabis provided that to them and it had healthy ingredients than if somebody else provided it to them and the chocolate had a lot of wax in it and you had a lot of fillers that are not reported on labels. You know how that stuff goes.
No doubt. And I really am strongly advocating for, in edibles, distillation and homogenizing is so imperative, because I think there's been a big problem with some of the other edible brands that have been out there, where you've got somebody that's getting 4 milligrams in a dose and somebody's getting 18, and it's supposed to be a 10 milligram dose. Yeah. But if you're not doing the proper SOPs, I mean, look, it's just going to happen. That THC doesn't exactly say, oh, we're going to be level in every single piece we're going to do. You have to make sure you're getting that done prior to making the edible.
Sure, if you're filling from the top of the bin or from the bottom of the urn where perhaps stuff is settled and you get a bigger dose. And uniformity is important too, not just from a safety perspective, but also from a branding perspective. Jamie?
Consistency, right? So people go through the process, and hopefully they get educated at the point of purchase, if from nowhere else, about how to self-titrate and go low and slow with the new product. And then once they figure out what works for them, they should have expectation of being able to go back and something similar happening the next time. That's the trick of having things be consistent.
It's funny that all of the people on this show know, because we've smoked a lot, that smoking is actually safer for the new user than an edible, because there's so many stories about these people take edibles. I hear this guy. Yeah. I've never really liked getting high, but I'll try an edible. And I accidentally took 70 milligrams my first try. Like, oh my God. Well,
that's so scary.
I've heard a story about a guy taking the 250 milligram edible and ending up in the hospital. Okay. And it's just.
I was hanging out with Razor Ray one time when he ate 200 milligrams thinking it was 20.
Right.
Oh my God.
Just that one piece. Yeah.
And again, what we're talking about is dosing. Now, if you've got a big chocolate bar, as a consumer, I like to have about 4, 5, 6 squares of chocolates. But if it's a medicated chocolate bar, that might be a way too much dose for a guy like me who doesn't typically eat cannabis in that way. So that's where.
Figure that out.
I mean, there's no easy answer. We can talk about portion control, but you're restricting the industry at that point. You're also speaking to your least common denominator as opposed to your most common denominator. So,
yeah, it's tough, but it's important.
Well, people have to learn about self-titration when they at the point of purchase if they're not familiar with it. Some of that onus is on the dispensary or the retail store.
Well, I feel like the message we have to kind of get in front of is, if you think about the average American consumer, they are not that great. It's not like we don't know that too much sugar is bad. It's not like we don't know that too much alcohol is bad. The information is out there. You know, it's just that the difference, I think, is people don't usually blame the thing. They don't go like, that sugar was there taunting my children and my child was poisoned by those, you know, the sugary cereal. It's like, well, there's 95 kinds of sugary cereal on the shelf. It doesn't mean we understand how it affects our body, you know? So so what's going to be different is people are not blaming sugar, really, like sugar companies. They're not taxing them more or whatever, I don't think. But with cannabis, they're going to go, oh, look, it's dangerous. So I feel like we need to get ahead of that message of like, no, this is just something you got to understand.
Right. Well, I think as Jim suggested, like there needs to be, people are going to want the brownie that's full of sugar and everything like that for sure. But there needs to be options for those who are trying to be more health conscious or planning on using those things consistently. And
it needs to be like more like, I know I've seen like Chex Mix and like pretzels and some trail mix kind of like, or granola bar kind of options out there. But for the most part, you're gonna get like those cereals in a bar that you were talking about with that are cannabis flavored. So
let's,
it is a challenge from what Rick said. You know, 9 out of every 10 customers are coming in looking, assuming they're going to get a gummy or a chocolate. And so to make 1,000 units of a granola bar, you don't want to get them stuck on your shelf and then all of a sudden getting close to the expiration date. So the education kind of needs to happen first. And, you know, but I fully support it. And certainly we need to make more sugar-free options available.
Hey, Patrick, we are winding down here. We got a few minutes left, and really have enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you coming on for like the entire show and participating in everything tonight, and really was interesting. And
I don't know if you guys have seen, but I listen and comment on other shows. I've been watching you guys, so I've been wanting to be a part of it. You guys are like I said, you guys are preaching to the choir every episode when I'm listening.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, really appreciate it. I'll definitely have you back on. I'm definitely looking forward to checking out the new store this week in Muskegon.
And give us that Rair website address one more time so they can check it out.
So Rair is spelled R-A-I-R. So it's rairco.com, RAIRCO.com.
Fantastic.
Again, we're rare because we're trying to be different than the other cannabis companies, and we grow in the air.
Nice. You want to leave us with anything else before we wrap up here?
No, I love all you guys. You guys are the best. Thank you for letting me be a part of your club.
Well,
thanks.
It was, I appreciate it, and I had a great time having a discussion with you today.
And I'm looking forward to getting high with you, Jamie.
It's not a conclusion that I show up someplace and I get high, you know. So I have to be in the right mood, and you know,
that's what it's all about.
Be in the right spot. And all
the
that
highlight of my life.
I'm looking forward to it too, man.
All right, Colin and Jim, talk about the Entheo show real quick.
Please.
Yeah. So last week's episode was with Decriminalized Nature Marquette. We had our friend Caden on, and then we had 2 guests from the University of Michigan Student Association for Psychedelic Studies and the Psychedelic and Neuroscience. Can't remember, club or something like that. I can't. Jim, maybe you can correct me, but they were just 2 scientist students. One's studying endogenous DMT, and the other one's a social work student. And yeah, we got to talk with them about what's going on there. They have a series that anyone can kind of like go on, and it's like, Jim, I know you've been on it if you want to talk about it a little bit more, but I think they have like the past episodes.
Sure.
Like
so,
every couple weeks.
Yeah, Moss and Nick, they're great students at U of M. And I'm not going to talk too much about the Entheo show because I know we're running out of time. I want to talk about something else regarding that and what the Entheo show is about. It's about going around Michigan and grabbing people from different decrim cities that are trying to decriminalize, like we did in Ann Arbor, and we're helping them blueprint what we did in Ann Arbor to decriminalize nature. And it's all leading up to September 19th, where we have an Entheo Fest. It's going to be very similar to Hash Bash. We're trying to get it going in Ann Arbor at the Diag. It's going to be really exciting, and that's what we're building up to. And that leads me to my next point, which is dispensary owners. And you've got a couple here. I think educating people about entheogens is now maybe the next step of responsibility for people that are in the cannabis field, where we see we can help raise up entheogens, because cannabis is an entheogen, and educate people so more people are aware of it and are less scared of it, and we'll get more legislatures around the state here to pass things.
And Shelly, do you want to kick in with Reeds and Weeds? By the way, Jim, cannabis is an entheogen. I love that. That's so.
I think it's Weeds and Reeds.
Nope, it's Reeds and Weeds. It's Reeds and Weeds. Just like the alphabet in the order.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure. Yeah, it's been that way for 57 episodes now.
Nice.
I finally got it right now. Then
it's a lot of reading there.
It is. Patrick, if you're a big reader, if you ever want to come on Reeds and Weeds and talk about a book that has something to do with cannabis or has nothing to do with cannabis, but you want to talk about it and smoke, that's what my show is. And I guess my only news is I've been editing, like I'm trying to make the show a little bit different format, and I've been learning to edit, and still looking for like an intern or a partner, because there's some things I just think somebody would be better at doing. But yeah, still loving it, still reading all the time, sharing that with people.
And when does it broadcast, the times?
Well, it's been very random over COVID, because I haven't done like a regular time and spot, because it's like I have to get together people after they've read the whole book, and that's not always guaranteed to be like every Wednesday or whatever. So, but you can go to reedsandweeds.com and on Facebook and Instagram.
And you're on podcasting platforms also, is that true?
It's on all streaming platforms.
And isn't it also true that the one that I was on, in which we talked about Graham Hancock's book, Fingerprint of the Gods, is one of the most...
It is, but I got to tell you, so we just did Mycophilia, and Mike Williams, Mycophile, who is very much involved with decriminalized nature. That one is really, everybody's listening to that one. That's very interesting, because for a while it's really been interesting lately seeing how it's traveled, because there's pockets of people listening around the world, and I don't know how they found me, but that's neat. Maybe they're mushroom people, maybe they're looking for a certain author or whatever, but it's really fun to connect on the two levels, which I both believe are like taking care of your brain, expanding your mind. So how many books can you read a year, and what is that going to mean for what you know this time next year? And connecting with people on cannabis or reading has always kind of improved my life. So I'm just going to keep heading in that direction.
Good.
That's beautiful.
Good deal.
This is my reading material. I don't really read books. I'm more of a periodicals kind of a guy. I was going to give Deb the last word, but she seems to have done.
She cuts out early all the time, so she doesn't have to deal with it. I'm pretty sure. I think we'll find out later.
Separation anxiety. I know we are so good.
Hey, that's that conversation about the testing and the microbial stuff is going to continue tomorrow on 420 Post with Mike Brennan and Rick Thompson and Jamie Cooper. And my associate at, well, not botanical company, she's under the umbrella with the processing and cultivation and stuff like that. But Tiffany Coleman has been on the show a couple of times, and people have appreciated what she's had to say. So that should be a good discussion too, and people should check that out. Who else is on?
Two old names from our history, Ben Rossman and Lev Spivak.
PSI Labs.
Yep, the leaders of PSI Labs, who initially filed the issue with the marijuana regulatory agency that got the whole ball rolling on this.
All right. So,
Patrick, can you put your contact info in the chat?
Sure, I'll do it right now. But I also just already subscribed to your Weed and Read Reed and Weed.
Oh, yay!
Already connected.
I'll put it out there
Yay!
right
Oh,
now.
good. Oh,
All right, well,
cool.
anyway,
Thank you so much.
We're going to continue to get better and grab these sponsors. And I think obviously, hopefully we convince Patrick. You might want to look at that. Maybe we'll talk about that over some cannabis on Thursday.
Absolutely. I'm looking to help any way I can.
Awesome. And
When?
man, Grow Green is getting in. We're going to do some cool stuff there. And so as that comes along, we'll know more about that. Just really appreciate it that we're able to continue to do this and have these platforms and get this good information out to people.
Right.
Thanks, everybody. And
Thank you.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe will be back next week. Have a good night.